The cantina on Orbital Station 7 buzzed with the quiet hum of alien voices and the soft glow of holographic displays. In the darkest corner, away from the main crowd, sat Kexton. His blue-scaled skin showed deep scars from many battles. 3 yellow eyes stared at the recording device on the metal table between him and the floating hologram of a human news reporter. The reporter's image flickered slightly as the quantum signal traveled across space. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, War Commander Kexton. Our viewers want to know about the Human Coalition War from someone who was actually there. Kexton's forearms rested on the table. His claws tapped nervously against the cold surface. For 15 years, he had kept quiet about what he saw during the war. No one asked the right questions. No one wanted to hear the truth about why the mighty coalition really lost. You want to know about the war, Kexton said, his voice rough like gravel. Everyone thinks they already know. Big coalition army fights small human forces. Humans get lucky. Coalition retreats. Simple story for simple minds. The reporter leaned forward in her chair, even though she was just a projection. But that's not what really happened, is it? Kexton's breathing slowed. The air recycler in his chest made a soft worry sound. Around them, other aliens continued their conversations, unaware that history was being spoken in whispers just a few tables away. I commanded the 47th Assault Wing, Kexton began. Best soldiers in the coalition fleet. We had won 30 battles against 17 different species. When High Command told us we were going to fight humans, we laughed. Humans were new to space, weak, soft. Their technology was decades behind ours. He paused, picking up a small metal cup filled with blue liquid. His hands shook slightly as he brought it to his mouth. The drink seemed to steady him. I had fought Zalarian berserkers who felt no pain. I had defeated Kraxian hive minds that moved like one creature. I had broken the spirit of Torvan honor warriors who would rather die than surrender. Kexton's voice grew quieter, but I had never fought humans. The reporter waited, sensing that pushing for more information would only make the old soldier close up. She had interviewed many war veterans from different species. They all had the same look. When they talked about the battles that changed them, the first time I saw a human in combat, Kexton continued, I thought there was something wrong with my tactical computer. The readings made no sense. Heart rate should have been through the roof with that much adrenaline. But it was steady. Brain activity should have shown panic. But it showed something else. Something I had never seen before. He set down his cup and looked directly at the recording device. Determination, not the kind you see in cornered animals fighting for their lives, not the kind you see in soldiers following orders. This was different. This was choice. The cantina around them seemed to grow quieter, as if the very air was listening to his words. My species, the Zalarians, we fight because we are told to fight. The Kraxians fight because the hive mind commands it. The Torvans fight because honor demands it. But humans, Kexton trailed off, searching for the right words. Humans fight because they decide to fight. Every single moment of every single battle, they choose to keep fighting. The reporter's hologram flickered as she adjusted her position. That doesn't sound so unusual. All species make choices in battle. Kexton's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter, but there was no humor in the sound. You do not understand. When I say they choose, I mean they think about it. In the middle of plasma fire and explosions, they think about why they are fighting. They remember the faces of people they are protecting. They calculate not just how to win, but how to win without becoming monsters. He stood up slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over the table. I have spent 15 years trying to understand what I witnessed. I have studied human psychology, human history, human philosophy. I have read their stories and watched their entertainment. I still do not fully understand them. The old warrior looked around the cantina, at all the different species, drinking and talking and living their lives in peace. But I know this much. The coalition did not lose because humans were better soldiers. We lost because humans were better beings. He sat back down, his 3 eyes focusing on the recording device again. You want to know about the war? The real war? Then you need to understand that everything you think you know about humans is wrong. Everything your government told you about why we lost is a lie. The truth is more frightening and more beautiful than any of us were prepared for. The reporter's image leaned forward. Tell me about the first battle. Kexton closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they held the weight of memories that had haunted him for over a decade. Kepler 4 for to see. A worthless moon that became the place where I learned what it truly means to be human. Kexton's 3 eyes stared into the distance as memories flooded back. The blue liquid in his cup rippled as his hands trembled slightly. The cantina around them seemed to fade away as he returned to that first terrible day on Kepler 4 for 2C. The moon was nothing special, he began, his voice steady but hollow. Rocky surface, thin atmosphere, 3 small mining colonies. Intelligence reports said 200 human civilians and maybe 20 soldiers. Easy target. We brought 800 warriors. The reporter's hologram remained perfectly still, not wanting to interrupt the flow of memories. I remember stepping off the transport ship, Kexton continued. My tactical officer, Vexmar, was already calculating surrender terms. Give them 1 hour, he said. Humans are practical. They will see the numbers and give up. We had done this same operation 40 times before with other species. Always the same result. Kexton took another sip of his drink. We set up our command post on Hill 347, overlooking the main colony. Perfect position. Our plasma cannons could reach every building. Our sensors could track every movement. Standard, coalition doctrine called for a show of force. Then negotiations. His voice grew softer. That is when we first saw him. Private Jinho, young human, maybe 25 standard years. He walked out of the colony alone, carrying nothing but a basic rifle. No armor, no backup, no chance. The old warrior's breathing quickened slightly. Vexmar laughed. Look, they are sending a messenger. Probably carrying surrender terms, but Ginho did not come to surrender. He came to fight. Kexton stood again, pacing slowly around the table. 800 of us. One of him, he should have been terrified. Any rational being would have been, but Jinho looked up at our position and smiled. Actually smiled. Then he raised his weapon. The reporter leaned forward. 1 soldier against your entire force. That is what we thought too, Kexton replied. My gunner, Torkin, asked for permission to eliminate the threat. I said yes. Easy kill. 1 shot. War over. But when the plasma bolt hit the ground, where Jinho had been standing, he was not there anymore. Kexton's mandibles clicked nervously. Humans move differently when they fight. Not just faster, but smarter. Jinho had calculated the trajectory of our weapon before we fired. He was already rolling to cover when the trigger was pulled. The alien veteran stopped pacing and gripped the back of his chair. Then the impossible happened. More humans appeared. Not from the colony where our sensors were watching. From everywhere. From rocks that looked empty. From shadows that seemed too small to hide anyone. From underground tunnels we never knew existed. His voice rose slightly. 12 humans, 12, against 800 coalition soldiers with superior weapons, superior armor, and superior position. Vexmar began recalculating odds. Still overwhelmingly in our favor. But something felt wrong. Kex sat back down heavily. Corporal Minho appeared 50 meters to our left, carrying what looked like an injured soldier on his back. But he was not running for safety. He was running toward us. While carrying a wounded comrade, he was attacking. The reporter's image flickered with surprise. He was advancing while carrying wounded. With one arm supporting his injured battle brother, Kisu, and his other arm firing his weapon, Kexton confirmed. This violated every tactical manual ever written. Wounded soldiers slow you down. They make you vulnerable. They force you to choose between mission and mercy. But Minho chose both. Kexton's voice cracked slightly. That is when we heard the singing. At first, I thought my translator was malfunctioning. No soldier sings during battle, but the humans were singing. Old songs, battle hymns, songs about home. They sang while they fought. He paused, collecting himself. Specialist Yuna took a position behind a fallen tree trunk. Our scanners showed she had suffered massive internal damage from one of our plasma bursts. Her spine was fractured in 3 places. Medical readings indicated she should have been unconscious from pain. The old warrior's 3 eyes dimmed. Instead, she held that position for 6 hours. 6 hours with a broken spine, bleeding internally, probably dying, and she never stopped firing. Every shot was precise. Every movement was calculated. She was fighting like someone who had all the time in the world. Kexton looked directly at the recording device. When we finally reached her position after the retreat order came, Yuna was still conscious, still alert. She looked at me with those strange human eyes and asked one question. Is my squad safe? Not am I dying, not will you help me. She wanted to know if her friends were alive. The reporter's hologram shifted uncomfortably. What did you tell her? I told her, yes, Kexton replied quietly. It was not entirely true. 2 of her squad members had been wounded, but they were alive, and they would recover. She smiled when I said this. Actually smiled. Then she closed her eyes and let herself feel the pain she had been ignoring for 6 hours. Kexton finished his drink and set the cup down with a soft clink. That was the moment I realized we were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting something else entirely. Something that made choices we could not understand, and sacrifices we could not calculate. Kexton's claws scraped against the metal table as he gripped its edges. The memories of Haven Colony were the hardest to speak about. Even after 50 years, the images remained crystal clear in his mind. Haven Colony was supposed to be our final victory, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. High Command was tired of the slow progress on other worlds. They wanted to show the galaxy. What happened when you defied the coalition? 3,000 of our best warriors against one small human settlement. The reporter's hologram waited patiently as Kexton gathered his thoughts. Around them, the cantina's usual noise seemed muted, as if the very air was holding its breath. The colony sat in a valley surrounded by hills. Kexton continued. Perfect kill zone. No escape routes. Our intelligence counted exactly 215 civilians and 15 soldiers. We had overwhelming firepower, complete air superiority, and numerical advantage of 200 to 1. He paused, staring at his empty cup. General Maktar gave them 1 hour to surrender. Standard procedure. He expected white flags, maybe some negotiations about safe passage for civilians. Instead, a human child walked out to meet our negotiation. Team Kexton's 3 eyes focused on the recording device. Her name was Hannah, maybe 5 years old by human standards. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a small white flower. When she reached our lines, she handed the flower to General Maktar and said, "My mama says flowers are for peace, but we choose war." The old warrior's voice cracked slightly. A child, a baby, really, speaking words that meant 40 days of hell for all of us. He stood and walked to the cantina's small window, looking out at the stars. The siege began at dawn the next day. We expected it to last maybe 6 hours. Humans would run out of ammunition, run out of food, run out of hope. Basic mathematics. Kexton turned back to the table. But mathematics do not account for human stubbornness. On day 3, our sensors detected movement in the colony's main square. Children were playing. Actually playing games while plasma fire lit up the sky above them. The reporter's image leaned forward. Children were playing during a battle. Hannah and 6 other young ones were playing what humans call hide and seek. Kexton explained, but they were not just playing, they were learning. Their parents were teaching them to move quietly, to find cover, to stay calm under fire. These children were being trained for war through games. Kexton's breathing apparatus cycled slowly. On day 7, I watched Hannah's mother, Sora, teaching her daughter to sort ammunition. The child's small hands were carefully organizing power cells by size and type. She was humming a song while she worked. Humming while surrounded by death. He sat back down, his large frame settling heavily into the chair. But the moment that broke our spirits came on day 31. Our forces had been taking casualties. From human snipers, 3 of my best soldiers were badly wounded and trapped in no man's land between the colony and our lines. Kexton's voice grew softer. Standard coalition protocol said to wait for nightfall, then attempt rescue. But the wounded were losing blood fast. They might not survive that long. As we planned our operation, something impossible happened. The alien veteran's mandibles clicked nervously. A human medic named Dong-Yun crawled out of the colony. In broad daylight, under active artillery fire, he was heading straight for our wounded soldiers. The reporter's hologram showed clear surprise. He was trying to reach coalition wounded. At first we thought it was a trap, Kexton admitted. No one risks their life for enemy soldiers. But Dong-Yun had no weapons, no backup, no protection except a small red cross painted on his helmet. He crawled 300 meters through plasma fire and explosive shells. Kexton's 3 eyes dimmed as he remembered. When he reached Sergeant Vector, Dong-Yun did not hesitate. He began treating the wounds immediately. Field surgery under fire. He stopped Vector's bleeding, stabilized his broken bones, and gave him pain medication. The old warrior's voice became hollow. Then Dong-Yun did something that changed everything. He activated his communicator and called both lines, coalition and human. He asked for a temporary ceasefire so he could treat all the wounded, both sides. Kexton paused, collecting himself. For 20 minutes, the entire battlefield went quiet. No plasma fire, no explosions. Just one human medic moving between wounded soldiers, treating injuries without asking which side they fought for. He looked directly at the recording device. Dong-Yun saved 3 coalition soldiers and 2 humans that day. When he finished, he stood up, brushed dirt from his uniform, and walked back to the colony. No one fired a shot. The reporter's image was perfectly still. How did your soldiers react? They were confused, Kexton replied. We had been told humans were ruthless killers, monsters who showed no mercy. But here was proof of the opposite. A human risking his life to save ours. Kexton's voice grew heavy with emotion. That night, I found 3 of my soldiers throwing down their weapons. They said they could not fight an enemy who would die to heal them. By day 40, entire squads were refusing orders, not from fear, but from shame. He finished quietly. We learned that humans do not just fight wars. They fight for the idea that even in war, compassion must survive. Kexton's entire body began to shake as he reached the hardest part of his story. The blue liquid in his cup rippled like tiny waves as his hands trembled uncontrollably. For several long moments, he could not speak at all. The cantina around them seemed to grow darker, as if the lights themselves were dimming in respect for what was coming. Titans, Gate, he finally whispered, the words barely escaping his throat. The final battle of the war. High Command said it would be our moment of glory. One last push to break human resistance forever. The reporter's hologram remained perfectly still, sensing that any movement might shatter the fragile moment. Kext had stopped looking at the recording device. His three eyes stared at something far away, something only he could see. The gate was a massive space station. Kexton continued, his voice growing stronger but hollow. Humans used it to control shipping routes through 3 star systems. If we took Titan's Gate, we could cut off human supply lines completely. The war would be over. He stood slowly, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. I led the assault. Personally, 2,000 coalition soldiers against 300 humans. The odds were perfect. Victory was certain. My tactical computer gave us a 96% chance of success. Kexton walked to the window again, pressing one clawed hand against the cold metal. But humans had prepared something we never expected, not a trap or a secret weapon. They had prepared to die, all of them, together. The old warrior's breathing became ragged. Sergeant Hunwoo commanded the human defense. I learned his name later. When we built the memorial at the time, he was just another target in my scope. Another obstacle to remove. Kexton turned back to the table, but did not sit. The battle lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of the most brutal fighting I had ever seen. Humans held every corridor, every room, every inch of that station. They made us pay in blood for every step forward. His voice cracked. By hour 16, we had broken through their outer defenses. Only 50 humans left alive. Victory was minutes away. That is when the plasma charge detonated in Section C. The reporter's hologram flickered slightly as the quantum signal adjusted. A plasma charge. Our own weapon, Kexton explained, his mandibles clicking rapidly. A faulty power coupling caused an overload. The explosion would have vaporized everything in a 50-meter radius. Half my assault team was in that section. 60 coalition soldiers about to die because of our own equipment failure. Kexton, S3, eyes closed tightly. Hunwoo saw it happening before anyone else. The plasma buildup, the critical overload, the inevitable explosion. He was 30 meters away. Safe. He could have taken cover, could have warned his own soldiers, could have saved himself. The alien veteran's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Instead, he ran toward the charge. Toward certain death, not away from it, toward it. Kexton's legs seemed to give out, and he collapsed back into his chair. I watched him sprint across that corridor like death itself was chasing him. But death was not chasing Hunwoo. He was chasing death, racing to catch it before it caught. My soldiers, the cantina around them, had grown completely quiet. Even the background hum of alien conversations had stopped. It was as if every being in the room could sense the weight of what was being said. Hunwoo threw himself on top of the plasma charge 3 seconds before it exploded. Kexton continued, tears now flowing freely from his primary eye. His body absorbed most of the blast. 60 coalition soldiers lived because one human chose to die. The reporter's image leaned forward slightly. He saved enemy soldiers. That is not the worst part, Kexton replied, his voice breaking completely. As Hunwoo lay dying, burned beyond recognition, he turned his head toward me. I was the closest coalition officer. Blood was running from his mouth. Light was fading from his eyes, and he spoke. Kexton, his whole body shuddered with the memory. He said, promise me something. I thought he would ask me to tell his family he died well, or to remember his sacrifice, or to honor his memory. Instead, he said, promise me you will take care of my people. The old warrior stared at his clawed hands. My people, not his soldiers, not his friends, my people. The coalition soldiers who had been trying to kill him for 18 hours. With his last breath, Hunwoo asked me to protect the enemy. Kexton looked directly at the recording device, his 3 eyes blazing with emotion. I promised. What else could I do? A dying human was asking me to show mercy to my own kind. The absurdity of it, the impossible nobility of it, broke something inside me that has never healed. He paused, collecting himself. Within 1 week of Hunwoo's death, my entire regiment refused to fight. Not from fear or cowardice, from shame. How do you continue a war against people who die to protect you? Kexton's voice became barely audible. Other units heard the story. It spread through the coalition fleet like a virus. Soldiers who had never met humans began laying down their weapons. They could not face an enemy that loved them more than they loved themselves. The interview room fell into complete silence as the weight of Sergeant Hunwoo's sacrifice settled over them like a heavy blanket. Kexton sat in silence for a long time. After speaking about Sergeant Hunwoo, the cantina around them had grown, almost completely quiet, as if every being in the room understood that something important was being said. His 3 eyes stared at the recording device, but he seemed to be looking through it, seeing something far beyond the present moment. That is why I speak now, he finally said, his voice carrying a strength that had been absent throughout most of the interview. 15 years have passed since the war ended. 15 years of lies and half-truths and official reports that mean nothing. The reporter's hologram remained perfectly still, knowing that this was the moment everything had been building toward. The coalition government tells its people that we lost because of supply problems. Kexton continued. his mandibles clicking in what might have been bitter laughter. They say human technology was more advanced than we expected. They blame bad intelligence, poor planning, unfortunate timing. All lies. He stood slowly, his tall frame casting long shadows across the metal table. We lost because of Ginho, who smiled when facing impossible odds. We lost because of Minho, who chose to carry his wounded friend instead of abandoning him. We lost because of Yuna, who fought for 6 hours with a broken spine and only asked if her squad was safe. Kexton began pacing around the small table, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. We lost because of little Hannah, who played games while plasma fire burned above her head. We lost because of Sora, who taught her daughter to sort ammunition while humming lullabies. We lost because of Dong Yun, who crawled through artillery fire to heal enemy soldiers. His voice grew stronger with each name. And we lost because of Hyunwoo, who threw himself on a bomb to save the people who were trying to kill him. The alien veteran stopped pacing and looked directly at the recording device. Do you understand what I am telling you? The coalition did not lose a war. We discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about civilization itself. Kexton's 3 eyes blazed with intensity. For thousands of years, species across the galaxy have fought for the same things: territory, resources, power, dominance, survival. These are rational reasons to fight. These make sense. He leaned forward, placing all 4 hands on the table. But humans fight for something else entirely. They fight for ideas, for principles, for the belief that even in the darkest moment, when death is certain and defeat is guaranteed, dignity must survive. The reporter's hologram flickered slightly as she processed this. You're saying humans fight for abstract concepts. Not abstract, Kexton corrected firmly. Real, more real than territory or resources. Humans fight for the idea that compassion should exist even in war. They fight for the belief that enemies can become friends. They fight for the principle that protecting others matters more than protecting yourself. Kexton straightened to his full height. Every other species in the galaxy fights to win. Humans fight to remain human. Do you see the difference? He walked back to the window, gazing out at the stars. After the war ended, I spent years studying human history. I read about their ancient battles, their old wars, their conflicts that happened centuries before they reached space. The same pattern appears again and again. Kexton turned back to face the recording device. Humans have a saying: it is not enough to win. You must win the right way. This makes no sense to military strategists. Victory is victory. But humans understand something we do not. His voice became softer, more thoughtful. They understand that how you fight determines who you become. If you fight like a monster, you become a monster. If you fight like a machine, you become a machine. But if you fight like a human, you remain human. The old warrior sat back down, his movements slower now, more deliberate. The coalition taught its soldiers to be efficient, to calculate odds, to minimize losses, to achieve objectives. We created perfect military machines. Kexton's mandibles clicked softly. Humans created something else. They created soldiers who could choose mercy in the middle of battle, who could show kindness to enemies, who could sacrifice themselves for people they had never met. He paused, looking around the cantina at all the different species sharing the same space peacefully. Today, coalition worlds and human worlds trade together. Former enemies work side by side. Children who were born after the war cannot imagine why we ever fought. Kexton's voice became filled with wonder. That is the human victory. Not that they defeated us in battle, but that they defeated the idea that enemies must remain enemies forever. The reporter's hologram leaned forward. What do you want people to understand from your story? Kexton was quiet for a moment, considering the question carefully. I want them to understand that humans did not win because they were better killers. They won because they were better at staying alive inside, even when everything around them was dying. He looked directly into the recording device one final time. We called them monsters because we feared their reputation across the galaxy, but they were the only ones who remained truly human in a universe that had forgotten what that word meant. Kexton stood and walked toward the cantina's exit. His final words echoed in the quiet room. We did not lose a war. We discovered what it means to have a soul.